Okay, come see if you can get my volume down.
Okay.
It may be. I need some, I can't hear them.
I hear you, Dad. I mean, you should be able to. I don't know why you can't. You're not on mute.
You see the, is this the sound? Is that sound?
No, sound is in here. No, not that one. Go to the arrow. That's your sound. Done. See, you hear things, you just can't. Let me go back in here. Where's your Zoom?
Could be their problem.
Yeah. See. Okay, we've got your, do you want to be on camera? I've got your camera closed. Do you want them to see you?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, this is all trash.
He is married to the beautiful Raina, has twin children. And on a personal note, Wes has been a dear friend of the USO. When he was the skipper of the Naval Station Mayport years ago, at every no-dough dinner, and many of you do know the no-dough dinners and maybe have volunteered, Wes would be there attending. His wife, Raina, would be the first volunteer to arrive around 3 o'clock in the afternoon and the last volunteer to leave. You won't find a better sailor that loves his fellow sailors and their family than my good friend, Wes McCall. So please give a West Rotary Jacks welcome.
Are we taping this by any chance? We taping or is anybody on this? Okay, so if I walk around, that's a bad thing. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Mike, thank you very much. I got lost there. I thought you were talking about somebody else, but it is an honor and a pleasure to be here. And I'm not a stranger to Rotary. In fact, back in the mid 80s, I grew up in a very rural town in eastern Oklahoma. Anybody from Oklahoma here? Probably not. As Mike said, it's a little small town called Tahlequah. It's about 60 miles or so east of Tulsa. It's a home of the Cherokee Nation. So I have about a quarter chair. I'm a quarter Cherokee and a tribe member. And I was in high school. I was the president of my local Interact Club. Yeah. It's probably the best thing you'll hear today. But so I got an appreciation for everything that the club does and the Rotarians do for the local charities and for the communities. So I want to say thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing for everybody here in the Jacksonville area and beyond. So give your hand yourself a round of applause. Yeah. Ike, thanks for having me today. Mike, thanks for the invite. It is always a pleasure to get out and represent the Navy to the city of Jacksonville and wherever I travel. I know it. It's not a secret. It's not a secret with me. It's not a secret with any of the leadership in Washington or anywhere, that the strength and the real key to the success of our military is you and the communities that embrace us outside our fence lines. In fact, we couldn't do our missions without the great support of those that surround us and support us and love us. And I've had the privilege of serving around the country and in some very supportive towns. But I have to tell you, Jacksonville is a real treat, and you don't see that. And a lot of communities will say that the most military supportive communities, Norfolk will say that, San Diego will certainly say that. I've served in both places. But when you get to Jacksonville, it's got a different feel to it. You know, from dealing with Mike and the folks over at the USO over in Mayport, and how they really embraced the sailors and how they had 400 kids come into those doors on no-do nights we talked about, and opened up the doors and fed them all and had the volunteers. Some of you have probably volunteered there at one point or another. And what a treat to see all those families come in there and be so taken care of. And that's just one example. The players is another example I could talk about for hours. You know, and one of my great joys was being on the Golf Channel when about 7-8 years ago with Damon Hack. I'm sitting there on Golf Channel live talking about all the great things Jacksonville does for its military and the job fairs and the spouse and the no-do dinners and all these great things. And one of my buddies out in San Diego said, "What the hell's Wes doing on TV?" You know, that's the last thing you would think, but there I was. So Jacksonville is an incredibly special place in my heart, my wife's heart. In fact, my kids were not born here; they were conceived down here in Jacksonville, and now they've got to come back home to where it all kind of started. They're 5 years old. They're on spring break, and they're hanging out the house over at Jack's, tearing it up right now. And I've told my wife we're gonna pack up. We're gonna take leave, which I don't do very often. We're gonna go to New Orleans tomorrow, and we're gonna go watch an air show, and we're gonna go eat beignets and do all that stuff. But that's my immediate plans. But thank you guys for your support. It's important that you know that we couldn't do our jobs without you. There's too much interaction between the local communities and our Navy not to say thank you to you. Well, as Mike said, I'm Wes. I am responsible for 18 installations here in the Southeast regions. There's 11 regions around the world. I have all the bases from Texas, from Lackland out in San Antonio, all the way to Beaufort, South Carolina, and down to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. So a lot of things going on. A lot of people. Too close. A lot of people, hundreds and about a little less than 200,000 people I'm responsible for. A lot of issues. Guantanamo Bay, 9/11 prisoners are down there. We got 39 prisoners down there. Not exactly my problem, but I support the trials, which are kind of ongoing. They've been kind of on hold for several years now, and there's no doubt they will continue to be delayed through, for the lawyers and those things like that. But I do all the logistics for all the trial support down Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. I provide all the water for Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. I provide all the power. We have to generate our own power. Everything on a base that you might not think about. I'm not responsible for the flying and the ships and the submarines and those kind of things, but I am responsible for providing all the support that makes those things happen. The security, the child care, the fleet and family support, the community interactions, all the things that you don't think about when you drive on board the base. Okay? So a lot of things going on in the region. Things that keep me up to late at night are security. Obviously, we've had a lot of active shooters in the region, Pensacola being one of them that made the news with the Saudi student out there. Lots of Saudi students, if you didn't know, lots of Saudi students right here in town. More Saudi students here in town over in Mayport than there are in Pensacola. And there's going to be more. Active shooter in Corpus Christi, Texas. Not mine, but active shooter out in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. So that keeps me up at night, thinking about those kinds of things and how we protect our sailors and our families when they're trying to do their jobs on the base. Resilience, kind of a buzzword, but it's real key. Naval installations are on the shores. So we do have challenges, whether you believe in climate change or you don't. There is some challenges that we have. So I'm on a big kick right now for resilience. How do we get our installations as close as possible to being energy independent? So if something happened, today is a good example. We never know what's going to happen to today's world. You can see it going on in Ukraine right now. But if Russia or China or another near peer actor wanted to not shoot at us, but just turn the lights out, that's a real problem. It's a real problem for America. It's not just the military. I'm personally convinced that the first shots of any of our next war will not be bullets flying. It's going to be somebody turning out a light, turning off the power someplace, shutting down your gas pump, shutting off the power in a hospital or in your grocery stores or traffic lights and causing mass chaos. It doesn't take much to do that. And it could set us back for a long time. Our bases are dependent on the power and the energy to get our ships underway and our submarines underway and our aircraft underway. So I think about that a lot. How can I work with JEA? How can I work with the community? How can I work with Clay and Duval County on agreements to make my power more resilient for that matter? And what I've been on a campaign for the last 7 months, 8 months I've been in command here, is working with local governments and state governments on resiliency type projects that cost me no money, but are a benefit to the community. It means jobs for the community. And I get a benefit from that. I'm talking about microgrids, for those that have heard those. I'm talking about solar, a combination of solar. I'm talking about combinations of wind. I'm talking about geothermal, especially out in Texas. I'm trying to join that all together somehow and put that into battery storage. And when I need it, I draw from it. And when I don't need it, it goes right back into the community grid where you benefit from it. So those things are very promising. I've saved over the last just year alone, or 6-7 months, I've seen over $1 million worth of savings, just to our installations and power alone. Who knows where it can go from here? I've got the biggest DoD utilities privatization project going on in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba right now. It's the biggest one in DoD. I have to produce my own power and my own water down there. It's going to be a very success. I'm going to be getting LNG from here. LNG was kind of a foreign thing a couple of years ago when I was at Mayport. Everybody was concerned about LNG coming down to St. John's, but now I'm getting power from there to power Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. So I'm very excited about the stuff that's going on in the resilience type world. You may or may not know, but we have nuclear power submarines right up in Kings Bay, Georgia, and other special things up in Kings Bay, Georgia that you probably know about. I can tell you it's nuclear weapons. Okay. I will tell you that they're safe. There's 500 Marines up there making sure that they're safe every day. But that keeps me up at night because I'm the response task force commander for those kind of things. So I have to make sure that they're safe. Okay. Lots of stuff going on in Kings Bay, Georgia. We're getting ready for the next class of Ohio class strategic missile submarines. Ohio class is going to be phased out here in the next 10 years or so, and Columbia is going to come online. So if you went to Kings Bay today, you're going to see lots of construction. There's 1,000 workers up there right now working on dry docks. Make sure we can bring that new class of submarine to bear. I'm flying out to Washington 2 weeks from now to make sure that our Washington facilities, I don't own them, but I'm responsible for all the undersea warfare construction going on in the United States Navy right now. So I got to go out and make sure that the Washington is well positioned. And I've got my concerns because of the tribal issues and the environmental issues out in Washington State. So that's a big concern out there. So Kings Bay is alive and well and doing great. LCS and Mayport. We didn't have them when I was over there. We were doing the build up back in the mid teens. Now we've got 14 LCS over there. You may be reading in the news that we're already decommissioning some of them, which is kind of strange because we're still buying them and we're still building them. Something we're going to have to watch over the next couple of years. But I'm also going to make a play to bring a new class of ship to Mayports, the new FFGs, which I think is going to be the future of Mayport in a lot of different ways. We've got unmanned aircraft at Mayport as well. So pretty much a maritime surveillance platform the size of a 737. That's about to start operating right out of Mayport every day, 24-hour coverage across up and down the eastern seaboard and down into the Caribbean. So a lot of interesting things going on with that. You'll see some runway improvements happening over in Mayport for that, and possibly over here at Jax. All the training of every Marine Corps, every Navy, every Coast Guard pilot trains at one of our bases. Every maintainer trains at one of our bases. That's Pensacola. Pensacola, Florida is key to national defense. Meridian, Corpus, Kingsville, all train every pilot that we have in the United States Department of the Navy. I got to keep the runways open, and they haven't been fixed in some of them 30, 40 years. I haven't said it yet. Money's a concern. Money's going, and Navy's got plenty of money, but it's going to figure out how we're going to fight the Chinese in about 2027. Okay, that's the timeline we're on. How we're going to beat the Chinese in 2027. Okay, it's not going to look like the regular fight. I've already talked about the cyber stuff and things like that. It's going to be a key of it. It's going to be a lot of unmanned stuff. It's going to be a lot of undersea warfare. That's why Kings Bay's alive and well. We can't get aircraft carriers close enough to China and they will not survive. So we got to figure out how we're going to fight under the water, through cyber, hypersonic weapons, things out of reach until we can get those corridors open where we can get the Marines on the beach and do what we need to do. It's going to be a big problem, but we're targeting late. It's not too far out. We got to have our eyes wide open on what the threat really is. We've got to make sure our pilots can train right now. We got to make sure our submariners can get underway and do what they need to do, and they can bring their aircraft and their ships back to a port, which we don't have a lot of them like we did in World War II out in the South China Sea, where you can bring a ship back in, reprovision it, fix it, get it back into the fight. That doesn't exist now, right? We got to figure that out. OpNav staff's looking at that right now. So everything that happens in my region is going to the fight, and we're training them for the fight. It's my job to keep them ready, keep their families taken care of, do whatever I can to keep those sailors' minds in the fight, get those ships fixed, get those subs fixed, and be ready to answer the call tonight in case something happens in Ukraine and Putin gets cornered enough to do something really stupid. Good. I don't want to just talk to you. Please raise your hand if you got a question. Please eat if you want, but I will answer anything you will that you ask me. If I don't know the answer, I'll make it up. But please ask me anything you want about what I do, what I don't do, and I'll be happy to talk to you about it. Any Naval Academy guys in here? I know I met one. Anybody who's served in the military? Anybody served in the military, have family? Nice to meet you guys. Thank you for your service. Yeah, thank you for your service. I don't know what I'm going to do when I get out. I'm sure I'll figure it out, but I don't know what I'd do without sailors and ships. Yeah. Who had a question? I'm sorry.
Yes, we have a question back here.
What is the Navy doing to bring manufacturing back to this country and not having it in our enemy's hands?
If you take a look at our private shipyards now. We've got really 4 shipyards that do the most of our ship maintenance and building ships. The Chinese, for example, have 17. They can outproduce us at every turn. They don't have the limitations that we do, right? Right now, there's a big movement in Washington, D.C. to fund a program called the SIOP, Shipboard Information I'll think of it a second. It's called SIOP. It's basically recapping our shipyards. Right now, we don't have dry docks that are capable of fixing the Ford class carrier. We have to bring manufacturing. We have to upgrade our shipyards. We have to get the industrial base beefed up enough where they can handle whatever a conflict brings us. And we just need it. I'm not sure we have the skill sets out there right now to handle what we might be walking into. It's on the minds of the people in Washington, D.C. It's a $20 billion project. It's been somewhat funded, but we haven't really got started yet. I'm talking about digital twins for the shipyards, so we don't have to think about how we're going to do this. It's about laying out the spaces properly so we could take advantage of some of the major cruise lines and other industry partners are doing, so we don't make those same mistakes. Aircraft with our FRC over at Jacksonville falling apart. We don't have the capability or the capacity right now to take care of what we actually have. So how do we develop that workforce? How do we make digital twins? How do we prepare ourselves for the next fight? And we're not there yet, sir. It's a great question.
Oh, I guess I have the mic. Thank you for your service. I'm a Navy brat. My dad, her grandfather was an A-7 pilot. Question for you. I've been reading about not necessarily naval installations, but remote areas that have small nuclear capabilities. I know Rolls-Royce has been into some of this. And you mentioned, nuclear carriers, nuclear subs. Does the Navy have an interest? Because they obviously have a lot of know-how to operate that for your power grid.
When I was with the Secretary of the Navy's office, I was a big champion. What he's talking about is, what's your name, sir? What Josh is talking about is small modular nuclear reactors. It's a relatively new concept. We obviously can do this, right? Navy's been driving around with nuclear reactors for years. Even had them on airplanes at one point as a prototype. Air Force is actually dabbling in this concept up in Alaska and seeing if they can bring it online. But we have the technology now with some good startup companies. They're very safe. They even use spent fuel to power them. So they're very safe. But could we change the national dialogue to convince the American public that these things are actually safe? In my mind, that's the future. We need to have that. It needs to be on the table as an option out there. Power, as we see it come through the transmission lines. I lose half my power just in transmission. Power lines and the infrastructure on the base haven't been changed sometimes since World War II, right? But how about if we thought differently and we went to nuclear power? I'm a fan. I don't know if I can get through Congress. I don't know if I can get it past the American people, but it needs to be on the table, Josh. Yeah, but a great question. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I'm a big fan. I hope the Air Force's prototype or experiment works out up there, because it could be a game changer, especially if we're fighting out in the Pacific. We don't have CBs and people like that where we can go out there and do island hopping like we did during World War II, and they can just make airfields just like that. They depend too much on contractors now. Trying to get a whole contractor force out there while bullets are flying. It's going to be difficult, right? Well, if we had a whole bunch of these little modular nuclear reactors, you go out there and power up a base right off the bat, put together some things, and it could be cool. That's right. Right.
Yes, Ed has a question over here.
Any thoughts on Ukraine food, if there's any spillover?
Well, I'm not sure I'm the right person or have the intel to give you an answer, but it's obviously a concern. obviously Poland's been pretty itchy and been willing to do some things that the administration here has not been willing to do so far. But you saw yesterday on the news, they're getting closer and closer to the boundary every day. What will be that tipping point if there is one? I hope there's not. I certainly hope there's not. But what would be that tipping point? You know, I'll tell you, the Navy's out there. You could probably skip across the Black Sea right now and hit a Navy ship. Yeah. So we're there. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's good. No, I'm glad to hear that. You mentioned preparing for war with China in 2027. What's the significance of 2027 as opposed to next year or 2020, 2030 or something?
Mark, it could be tonight. But it's that point where the Chinese will have thought that they're going to have a cakewalk right across the Taiwan Strait. That's going to be the kicker. That's when they think that they're going to have everything they need to provide to have that overmatch to walk over to Taiwan. And some semiconductors are a big deal. Your car right now probably depends on a semiconductor. And Taiwan's the world's biggest producer of semiconductors, and they want their hands on it, just like we do. So we got to be ready for that. What's that going to look like when they send over 100 ships? Are we going to be ready, or is the American public going to be willing? How much of the American public cares about Taiwan until you talk about semiconductors in the car they're driving? Tahlequah, Oklahoma, they probably don't care about Taiwan until you tell them stuff like that, right? Yes, sir.
Can you speak to Japan's involvement in the defense of that area?
Japan's all in. Japan, if you ever get a chance to go to Japan, and I lived there for a couple of years, you will not find a better ally. Talk about ship capacity. If you go to Japan, that's the place to get your ship fixed. If Japan exists after the first salvo. Okay. Or our bases exist after the first salvo. Okay. Lots of animosity, right? It's a pretty close neighbor too out there. But you want to find a bigger ally than Japan. Their Navy's top notch, and their ships look beautiful, and they're well trained, and they operate with the United States Navy every day out there on exercises. I didn't have to worry about the Chinese or the Japanese. No, they were good friends to us out there. Yeah. Yes, sir. Absolutely. It's a weak spot now. It's just a unsafe. You got to be operating at max capacity just to navigate through there. We had a submarine go aground there a few years ago. You probably didn't read about it, but it went aground, making one of the turns up there. And it's a constant dredging problem. It costs $20 million a year just to keep Kings Bay's river open, just to get up into Kings Bay. So it wouldn't take much just to foul that and keep all of our strategic submarines hemmed up. Take a look at the river up going into Norfolk, Virginia, the largest naval base in the world. All you have to do is either sink a ship or threaten to sink a ship in the river, and you've clogged up the Atlantic fleet for a period of time. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. Just the threat. Yes, ma'am. It's this. It's public. It's politics. You've heard every time I talk when I was skipper of Mayport, they always say, when are we going to get a carrier in Mayport? You can make that argument. We had one for Kennedy was here for years, right? I can tell you we're never going to get a carrier in Mayport. But for those of us that sort of agree that there's goodness in not having all your eggs in one basket. All your nuclear carriers are sitting in Norfolk. It would be nice just for strategic dispersal. We tried that. Secretary of the Navy back a long time ago, kind of satisfied, the the politicians down here in Florida that we'd send an ARG since we just lost the ARG, over in Mayport. And in a lot of ways, it makes sense. If it costs $700 million just to get the infrastructure down here, the nuke support and the maintenance infrastructure to Florida, just to think about getting an aircraft carrier down here. To be honest with you, I don't think Mayport, with all the buildup of LCS and everything else, I just don't think there's a capacity unless Mayport expands quite a bit to handle 5,000 additional sailors and the maintenance tail that would bring. But I agree with you, sir. Long answer to, yeah, it's a problem. Yeah. Yeah. Who else has a question? Yes, sir. I don't think we have a problem with the Georgia Spaceport. We do have a problem with the St. Mary's Airport. We did have a problem, and now there's an ongoing issue up there. There's a local commissioner up there who wants to build another airport just outside the gates. Obviously, the Navy's not a fan of that. It's our litigators are going at it again to try to keep them from building another runway next to King. Encroachment's a huge problem, not only for Region Southeast. It distracts from the mission. It ties up people for hours and hours in litigation. And you shouldn't build anything near an installation. If you're going to move to the area, don't move by an airport or a Navy air station and then complain about the noise. Please don't do that. Oceana, but the big one's in Washington. It's at Coopville. It's the retired admirals that move out there, and for some reason they didn't know that they fly a bunch of F-18 growlers out there, and there happen to be noisy. So do me a favor, don't move near the airport if you don't like aircraft noise. And if you do, come on in. Okay. Who's next? Anybody next? Yes, sir.
We have all our
Well, typically, we can follow the Russians. They got very quiet submarines, no doubt about it, but we know where they are initially. They won't lose them unless we have some kind of sensor on them. That's the beauty of the P8. It can stay out there for a long time and carry a lot of sonobuoys. And that's connected to every other ASW platform that we have out in the fleet. So its loiter time is fantastic. It's a challenge. ASW is not, it's not, you ever chased a submarine, it's not easy. And you got to be lucky. We used to call it awfully slow warfare. Yeah, because it was a tedious problem. But the good thing is we have sensors that will, for the most part, localize them for me. But as soon as you get a P8 on them, or if you get a 60 Romeo that's parked over in Mayport on them, you're not going to lose them. And they're here. So they're flying right out of here. They're flying out of Rota, Spain. They're flying out of Hawaii. They're flying out of Japan. So the thing about submarines, you got to know where they are. We've got good sensors to pretty good track of them. Okay. Thank goodness. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Would be totally on. Was it? Oh, she's talking about Pensacola. Pensacola was almost a direct hit from Hurricane Sally in 2019, 2020 maybe. Over $500 million worth of damage. Coupled with all the damage that happened in New Orleans, another $90 million. The tornado that went through Kings Bay last year, another $100 million. And along to Panama Beach, all of it added up to almost $600 million. We haven't fixed Pensacola. If you went to Pensacola today, you will see 27 football fields of blue tarps over roofs. Okay. You will see the beach line eroding and eroded. That's uncovering underground utilities that provide power to the base. Pensacola is fragile. It doesn't take a storm anymore. It takes a heavy rainfall. So all those blue tarps, they're not providing any, long-term, effort relief. It's just prolonging the inevitable, because if I could have saved a facility, now I can't, after the mold and the other stuff that comes from, water coming into your house. So Congress actually was very kind to us. They gave us $565 million to go through a storm recovery. Obviously, that takes a long time to plan how you're going to design and rebuild in some cases. I've been working with Congress and working with the Secretariat to try to use some of this. It's really money that would just go back to fix the old facilities. But why the hell would I want to do that? The facilities are already 1940s, right? I need Congress to help me out with more authorities where I can change these dollars into projects that actually are resilient. They're new facilities out of 100-year floodplains. Get them away from the water, build them up, and let's do something good with your taxpayer money. Instead of just putting lipstick on the pig and putting a Band-Aid on a project when the next storm comes and next year, I'm going to have to redo all over again. Help me do something smart. One of the things to kind of piggyback on that topic is COVID and the telework thing that we're seeing, and some of you are probably seeing in your businesses out in town. If you walked in my headquarters building, 90% of the staff's not there. I've got a whole building used to house 300 to 400 people. I'm down to less than 100 showing up to work every day, right? So what opportunities has COVID brought and the telework, environment brought where I can start collapsing facilities? Now I don't have that infrastructure cost, which the Navy's not going to give me. How do I do something smart to collapse back into some of our stronger facilities? Take some of those cubicles that I've got, turn them into something like Google or Apple might have, would be a hoteling space where you'd come in every 2 weeks and you plug in your computer and you get all the computers refreshed. And I send you back home. As long as you're doing your job, I don't have a problem. In fact, people are doing their jobs pretty damn good. And in fact, that's probably what we're going to have to face as a country in the future. Something totally foreign to me. But it's actually worked out pretty darn good. And how are we going to attract a quality workforce if we don't keep our minds open to these kind of opportunities? Because they're going to ask us for it, or they're not going to work for us, any of us. So good questions. Pensacola is not fixed. I'm going out there next week to look at it. No, absolutely not. I'm getting held up by DOD now. The Secretariat agrees with me. I need to change the color of this money. Congress has given us authorities, but the lawyers are fighting about what the Congress actually means. So I said, why don't you just ask Congress? They're generally on our team, right? They really want to do good, but I don't have the authorities right now or clear authorities to change this money into Milcon, tear down the old and build new, more resilient, hurricane-proof or more proof facilities to withstand at least a hurricane category 4 storm. The hangars we have out there are atrocious. We're spending thousands and thousands of dollars every hurricane season to fly off our airplanes because we can't put them in the hangars because the hangars will fall down. Okay, so that's a lot of money going just towards fly-offs. The only ones in the hangars are the ones we can't fly off, and they're stuck there because of maintenance. So money would be great. Money would solve a lot. It wouldn't solve everything. I'm sorry. Yep.
Thank you for your service. Could you comment on the bases and sea level rising?
Yeah, that's a concern, and probably the best example. I haven't seen it so much as a result of sea level rise than I have as destructive storms here in this region, specifically Pensacola. But when you take a look at the Naval Academy is actually subsiding. So sinking, it's not so much for, climate change. It's mostly about the soil it was built upon. When we were there, we used to comment about all the books in Rickover Hall. Rickover Hall's a library. When the engineers were building, or not Rickover Hall, what was the name of the library there, sir? I can't remember. But we used to joke, they used to tell us back when we were midshipmen that the library was sinking, and then they said the engineers didn't account for the books. That may or may not be the case, but Naval Academy's got some problems. Where John McCain's buried out there, the cemetery is slowly getting taken over by water. It's a whole Annapolis, whole eastern seaboard, really. So what are we going to do with the Naval Academy? Well, they're talking about that. What's the Marine Corps going to do with Parris Island? Every year during storm season, the Marine Corps has to move their recruits to Georgia to do their boot camp because of all the water that's accumulating at Parris Island. What's the Marine Corps going to do with Parris Island? Would you want to move and retreat back to into the central United States? You could move to Camp Pendleton, then you got an earthquake and a fire problem out there. So DOD, Department of the Navy, has got some real challenges ahead. We're going to have to make some hard decisions. We could go to Oklahoma. They'll take anybody out there. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for all the great questions. We have time for one more question.
Yes, ma'am. I could talk forever.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for your service once again. Everything that you've talked about today brings fear, concern.
No, I shouldn't.
Well, leave us with something to feel really optimistic about.
I want
please.
you to feel good about your Navy. I want you to feel good about your sailors. If I tried to join today, or any of us in this room tried to join today, we probably wouldn't be accepted. These guys and gals are the top-notch people, and they're good people, and they're sacrificing it, and they're putting their lives on the line every day. And that deserves, appreciation and support of the community in our country. They're awesome people. If I could be out there on a ship with them right now, it would be. There's nothing better than being at a ship at sea or being in an aircraft flying over the water 150 feet on the darkest of nights, knowing that you're going to be okay because you got shipmates sitting next to you. It's going to get you home. God bless them. God bless them. God bless them. But you should feel good about that. Anytime you see a sailor, you should thank them. You've heard the numbers. You've seen the makeup of Congress. We're getting further and further apart. The military's been growing further and further apart from the American public and Congress. Fewer than 1% join. Fewer members of Congress ever served in any branch. But it's comforting to come here to Jacksonville and know that you guys love them and you got their back. Okay. That's what I tell them. I tell them that they're lucky to live in Jacksonville. And they're lucky that they got a chance to serve as well, because they're going to remember that. They're going to be able to tell their grandkids same stuff I'm telling you about sitting in a cockpit, 1,000 miles from nowhere. You don't have enough, the only place you got to land is on a postage stamp. They'll tell those stories, and hopefully inspire their kids or grandkids to follow suit. But what a privilege to serve with them. Okay. Thank you for that question. You're welcome. Thank you.
Would like to give you a token of our appreciation. Fantastic presentation. Thank you, Rear McCall. I'll do announcements real quick. We'll get through the rest of the meeting. Board meeting immediately following this meeting right here at Ken's table. We'll start. We'll get through the board meeting quick. All members are invited to attend. I want to thank Lee Davis and William Milne for putting on our St. Patrick's Day social last Wednesday night at Community Health Outreach. We partnered with North Jacks Rotary on that event, and North Jacks Rotary showed up and presented this to our club. It's their celebrating 50 years of service above self booklet, real nice book. If anyone wants to see it, I'll give it to Patty and she'll have it in our club archives. Speaking of doing stuff with other clubs, Tom Schneider has worked to organize the blood drive next week, and he's worked with President Gene of the Riverside Club. The blood mobile is going to show up in the morning to get the Riverside Club donations, stay through lunch to get our donations. So we're going to double up on donations. So congratulations, Tom, for taking that on and doubling it up on it. We are going to be doing an event next month with the Riverside Club. And I mentioned last week that we have a wager on the blood drive. So the event's going to be at a local brewery, and the winning club gets drinks on the other club. So we have a wager and alcohol's involved. So roll up your sleeves, folks. Come next week, prepared to give blood. If you have any extra blood laying around the house, bring it. We need to win this. The most important thing is the bragging rights. We can't let Riverside Club donate more blood than we do. So we gotta step up. Community Health Outreach has an immediate need for a pantry truck, a crucial need. So if anybody wants details on that initiative, see me after the meeting, please. And I also want to recognize the volunteers from our club that served at TPC last week. I know Mike Crumpler, Palmer Bell, any other TPC volunteers? TPC it drives a lot of money into our communities, a lot of charitable donations, and we really thank you for your service and braving the bad weather. I would like to call up Lee Davis for Family of Rotary, followed by Carter Rosenblum, who will introduce our guests and visiting Rotarians.
Thank you, President Ike. I wanted to let everyone know there's no birthdays this week. We have about 5 next week, so we'll celebrate those next week. President Ike, whenever we had a really good time at the community outreach, and we had that need for the truck. Pat Moldville Hill was the president, gave us a good visit and gave President Ike that nice book. And last, our condolences go to Mike Crumpler in the passing of his mother last week. I'm sorry. Does anyone else have any family of Rotary to announce today? All right, thank you very much.
Yes, we have a few guests today. I'd first like to talk about a strange thing. I was in 5 Points recently. It's kind of an eclectic area. I saw a guy with a cheetah on a leash. I walked away from him because I knew he was going to try to pull a fast one on me. With that, I'd like to introduce our guest today. Josh Harrison has brought in Ellie Harrison. Ellie, please stand up. We also have Julie Burkhardt. Thank you for visiting today. And Tom Schneider has brought in Dinkins Grange from the Southjax-Rotary Club. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Carter. Fantastic presentation today. The hits keep on coming. Next week, we'll be right here for lunch, and our speaker will be Dr. Zachary Fajan from Edward Waters University. So that's a don't miss, can't miss event. Once again, register for the blood drive. We have to beat the Riverside Club. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Thank you, Tom, for the blood drive. Thank you, Tom. Yes, sir. If it's from our club, I'm going to say yes. If it's from Riverside Club, I'm going to say no. So bring proof of donation. We will win at all costs. Any other announcements for the good of the club? Past President Mary Pat, would you lead us in the four-way test? Quote of the week. The air was soft, the stars so fine, the promise of every cobbled alley so great that I thought I was in a dream. Jack Kerouac.